Going over.
I sat on the other side for a long time before I got on the board.
And you still did.
I still did.
Hold it. Oh my God. All right.
But it was negative.
It might be silent. It might be.
But it was really
Oh, they might
I'm a Baptist.
Okay.
Sits back.
Okay. Well, okay.
just some more nuts.
We still each other. Should come down and that's it. And good guts.
So who's gonna be close to Labor Day next year? Why bring these books? What is it? The big nice schedule.
Oh, I do something. I've been on airplanes.
Yeah, we're
Pretty well.
Bank, so. Then I can get in there. We're gonna be aisle.
My style's not much different.
You know, when you walk in, you used to tell you right there. I actually keep that same concept.
Yeah. I mean, they did, they tried to run it one last day.
I'm still in but I'm moving the counter. I had all the plans on there.
Okay, I'm positive I can. Okay, I'll try that.
But I still want to Ten minutes. Drink.
Can you guys?
But I do dinners.
Back to order. 10:45 items. Planning and building, consider accepting and awarding proposals for lawn maintenance at the Princeton Library Park as follows. Landscape, Princeton Park for $290 per month. Good morning, Karen.
Good morning, board. How are you? You had given direction for our department to go and get in contact with Orla Landscaping on why they had not bid on the Princeton Park. In doing so, I was told that when they went to do the bids, they did not have time to go to Princeton, so that's why they didn't bid on when the bidding was open. We asked them if they would like to submit a bid, and they said, sure. So they sent us a bid, and this is what we received. So they are interested, and this is what their bid is.
I'll move to accept. Are we
We're accepting.
accepting the bid?
Moved by Carter, second by Andrew. Any discussion? Roll call.
Supervisors Mary,
Aye.
Carter,
Aye.
Vann,
Aye.
Marshall,
Aye.
and Heather.
Aye, passed 5-0. Now, consider approving an agreement between the County of Colusa and the Planning and Building Department and Aurelia Landscape for lawn service at the Princeton Library Park effective September 1st, 2012 through August 31st, 2013 in the amount not to exceed $3,480 for the term of this agreement with a 30 are these dates consistent with all the other contracts for his stuff?
Yes, it's starting later. It's starting September 1st, where the others started August 15th, but they all end on the same day.
Okay.
Okay, great. So moved.
Moved by Carter. Second by Drew. Any other questions? Roll call.
Supervisors Andrew.
Aye.
Carter. Vann. Marshall. And Evans.
Aye. That's 5-0. Thanks, Karen.
Okay, are you going to approve the agreement?
Yeah, that's what I'm just getting.
Oh, you just approved the agreement. Okay, so we'll have,
We're good.
we'll have them good. Thank you very much, and have a very nice afternoon.
1050 item, auditor controller, consider approving intra-budget transfer number 12096 through 12097. Moved by Drury. Second by Carter. Questions? Roll call.
Supervisors Andrew. Carter. Vann. Marshall. And Evans.
Aye. That's 5-0. Consider approving changes in revenue and appropriations as follows as far as 4/5 vote. And there's pages. Is this like cleanup? Wow.
This is the end of it?
Sorry. Not getting your work done, Overruled.
Moved by Marshall.
Second.
Second by Drury. Discussion. Roll call.
Supervisors Andrew. Carter. Vann. Marshall.
Aye.
And Evans.
Aye. That's 5-0. Now we'll go to administration. Item B, discuss East Park's Stony Gorge Reservoir Recreational Facility Site Development Study. Consider multiple options and varying levels of detail for further review and development. Mike? Go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, honorable board. As a result from the workshop that we held last week on the 21st, direction was given to come back with a cookbook of what the options may be to explore the nuts and bolts of the opportunities of it. What you have in your packets, the very back of your packet, is a listing of what Mr. Lamphere's firm would propose as a reasonable course of action. And if you have any questions, Scott could elaborate on them. By no means is that a blanket proposal. Your ability is to be able to pick and choose through that scope of work to see what would be most appropriate to meet your desired goals.
Scott, could you talk us through
Sure.
this?
I'd be happy to. So what I did is I went back and spoke with members of several divisions in the firm and came up with some cost proposals for various items. The first one being is general project management, which is involved overseeing the project. The second one, which I think is relatively important, is the data collection and site survey. And what this would involve is going out to the site, obtaining any existing digital imagery, high resolution aerial photography, and preparing a base map layout set for both reservoirs. What we would do with those is create essentially the base formation of a construction set of drawings that would allow in the future them to be bid out. So we're already getting to the point where we would have something that we could actually get very accurate hard construction costs with. which I think is really important prior to developing a financial plan. So these would be 24 by 36 scale drawings that would indicate the layout of the campsites, locations of infrastructure improvements, boat ramps, water source, electrical service, dump stations, guard shacks, etc. So we would have that approved, both by either yourselves or staff or both, to make sure that we've got the plan available to do the formal financial plan on. Without that, I think that we probably be sort of a little off target in terms of what we're trying to get an accurate business plan for, which really is what we're talking about. And collectively, we would have, hopefully, during this process, the formulation of either a JPA or a formal MOU between all the counties involved and all the other stakeholders involved. And then that would be sort of our guiding source to determine exactly what plan we put together. To me, that's probably the most critical thing to do. I think unless we're able to formulate and have approved a definitive plan, it's going to be difficult to put together a financial plan for that. So I guess to a certain extent, they're probably in order of priority. I would say that number 2 and number 3 are going to be what the board and fellow stakeholders would need in order to be able to prepare a business plan to move forward. So based on that, once we get that approved, we could go, if it's the board's pleasure, we could move forward and do a infrastructure and maintenance cost program. We would have those in enough detail to be able to allow enough confidence that the viability of it would be a lot more accurate. And then based on that, expected revenues, setting a fee source, basically put together a business plan that would identify how much initial revenue would be required, expected annual and long-term revenues, maintenance costs, any additional capital costs. In addition to identifying grant sources, additional state and federal, perhaps maybe if there's any local sources worth investigating, we can do that as well. I think the formulation of JPA or having a very formal group involved is going to solidify the ability of that group to be able to pursue additional grant funding, which I think would be a big help. And then finally, the last task would just be assisting with the development of the Joint Powers Authority to the extent that we provide information, attend meetings, and have an input in terms of how this would relate to the development of the site plans and the financial plan. That's basically it in a nutshell. And again, the intent was to start off with the biggest package, and then from there, if the board pleases, we can back off, and we can start to take pieces of this or scale it down if necessary. This is what I think, if it was money that I was investing personally, I would say this is probably the level of effort that we would need in order to have a financial plan we can set on anyone's desk and say, this is the proposal, this is something. But certainly,
Mike, and I'm sorry, nobody's on plans here, this is why I'm asking you this question. I don't know if we're going to answer or not, but base maps and site layouts, remember when, just through our 2-week-old general plan update, we went out and did all that updated GIS information, and I mean, is there anything in that set of documents or information that they had to put together that you can use instead of having to go out and do it? Because the data collection part is so expensive and so time consuming.
The short answer would be, I don't know, but I would find it highly unlikely if there was not some data that we could not glean from the note.
It's brand new, and we just adopted our plan a couple weeks ago. So that's how new information is, and they're also in the process of updating our zoning code. So they are still collecting fresh data, and I know they put it in the GIS form that we hadn't had before, so there might be some there we could use.
Certainly touch base.
If I may say, the only concern I would have is maybe the resolution sign up. We're talking about laying out individual campsites. Google Earth is probably not enough. So if the accuracy is better than that, then that would certainly be usable. We're not going to be
2 feet. I think it was 10 or 2 feet.
Okay.
The jury on it.
Certainly.
I'd be curious to see if that could save us any money on the base maps and site layouts.
Yes, it would.
And I don't know if any of the data collection or sites are way anything there.
So Scott, is this an estimate? The estimated hours and estimated cost, is this like an estimated not to exceed?
Correct, yeah. And again, it would be, as Mike and I talked about the Cadillac version, but again, if it was my money to invest, I would probably want to make sure I've got enough information and enough detail up front to provide the accuracy so that I've got a level of confidence moving forward with the financial plan. I would want to make sure that that's there and solidified initially, so. But certainly, if there's alternate sources of data and alternate means of doing this, we can certainly incorporate that.
So I'm not hearing you say if you would at least need to go through task 4. That's what I'm trying to say in order to get some sort of a,
Yeah, I think,
feel for what, is this doable or not?
correct. Well, it's certainly doable. The question is, how would we do it? What are the sources? What are the expected revenues? What other sources of money can we obtain? What are the actual hard costs? And, nuts and bolts, nails, sticks of wood, any other elements that have to be included in order to have that financial plan. I mean, we can certainly put a financial plan together without going into a lot of detail, but it's only going to be as good as the data we put into. So from my point of view, if we could have, and I certainly think it would benefit the board and all the other members involved, to have as much accuracy as possible and move forward with the financial plan. And also keeping it flexible so that as things change, as we discover new sources or we have, any modifications to it, we can make that a scalable plan.
Well, and it's also going to take a fair amount of time to get it through the process, so we need to make sure that the numbers will be current as we're going through it on the federal side, so that we don't have to go back and do it again.
And for the Glenn County soups in the back, we stuffed some money in an account to do some research for feasibility up there to see if it was feasible. And we all believe it has to be both lakes. It's if you didn't do both of them, one would impact the other. And just the scale of it all would be, So we need you guys, but we know the situation, and we're just hoping that we can get it rolled through and do what we've got to do and see if it's financially feasible, and then we can move forward slowly or quickly if this Rich wants. But anyway, but that's the plan, just to ease into this. And with why the sixth task here is to assist with the JPA development, and that. How that looks is yet to be determined. That would be us working together. If at the end of the day after the financial plan, yeah, this is doable. Let's move forward on it. And anyway, we need to be partners somehow, but that's yet to be determined.
Well, I would think that anybody that would be involved in JPA, as we talked about at our last meeting, would need to have this information to see whether they want to partner with us or not. So, is it my understanding, Gary, that we had budgeted enough money to cover this?
Yes.
As I recall?
Yes. In the preliminary study that was done through the transit agency, correct? Got this first piece done, so correct. The first infrastructure or whatever it was, so regional infrastructure.
Is Orland water users, is that all muni water? Is that all municipal water, or
Your ag irrigation.
it's 100% ag irrigation?
How much water does the Bureau hold behind there, Tim?
We've got 50,000 acre feet per reservoir.
What's your average drawdown on that?
East Park, there's so many waters. East Park, it's very minimal. I've been with water users 14 years. I think we've drawn it down significantly in one year. and it wasn't as significant as they had done in the past. Now, Stony Gorge gets exercised more often. Right now, we're at about 39,000 acre feet. Why we don't exercise it as much is that we use water out of Blackfeet, and then we have an exchange agreement with the Bureau. So this year, we're taking, Blackfeet down quite a ways. And as a result, the reservoir levels up above are staying relatively high. The downfall is if there's no more rain, and next year, we will owe reclamation, actually the CDP, X amount of acre feet. So there's no physical drawdown, but what I was trying to say is,
It's paper, yeah.
Yeah, it's on paper, but if we didn't get that drawdown, then, or we didn't get, substantial rains, you'd see a noticeable drawdown both reservoirs next year.
Well, and that's what it's
But,
I'm not questioning it
Sure.
at all. I'm just curious, that was just one curiosity.
But it's, quite honestly, in both reservoirs, it's been minimal, the last few years.
It was tough in the 70s,
Yeah.
but then we had 4 years of drought, so. Rich could answer that. So let us know why you went out.
Reclamation recognizes the value of recreation, but it's not our mission. And so if you look at Shasta, we gave it to the Forest Service, Whiskey Town Park Service. It's been pretty much a line of thought along recreation, or reclamation is to get rid of it. This pass it on to people more suitable to manage it. It's not in the recreation management business.
And then the Oregon unit was exercising their option for, fee title. And if it goes through, they don't want to recreate under the partner to recreate.
If it's going to be feasible, we need to go through this process, through study, and at that point, get partners and either go forward or not. And absent that, I don't think Orland wants to get into the recreation business. And certainly, I don't want to see the gates locked around the recreation facility, so.
But even if Orland had a change of heart and wanted to get into the rec business, they would still need this kind of information.
Right.
So,
So, are the Illinois usually proposing a cost?
that hasn't been a discussion happening.
I think we need some information, hard information, before we can twist arms to get into a JPA and go forward. So,
What I asked was oil and water usually going to participate in some of the financial burden of the study.
That's something that would have to be referred to our board of directors to answer that.
Or Glenn County stuff.
Glenn County is not in a financial position.
That's what I can ask.
yeah.
Well, I thought,
Yeah, I understand that. I understand that, but if at some point in time we develop a JPA agreement that we have some cost reimbursement when things are better, then certainly I would entertain that. But initially, I understand Glenn County's plight and would value their consideration in being a partner at a later date.
Yeah. Would there be any value in doing this a little bit backwards, or we go forward with making sure that the partners are on the table and pushing the JPA issue ahead? I'm assuming all the arguments are us and what kind of. question or one question? You guys hear what I said? I said, would there be any point in pursuing the JPA up front instead of on the back end, so that we can do some cost sharing on some of these, to make sure that the other partners won't even participate? And I mean, acknowledging what everybody's situations are right now too. It seems like we all want to be at the table doing this together, not us just doing it. So it seems like maybe we should put the JPA up front and move forward with that discussion with the 3 different entities, and then move forward with thinking of cost of it.
From the perspective of the water use, I'm not sure how interested they would want to be in the JPA, to be honest with you, but, just legally, I know we were unable to be in the site JPA because we're not an agency. So I think that would preclude us from being in the JPA.
What's the pulse for Glenn County, Supervisor? You're asking me to speak on behalf of the board? So you can give me your personal opinion, I know you can't speak on.
I'll be real brief, Mr. Chairman. Stony Gorge lies in my district. Steve Sullivan, represent District 3 in Glenn County. I've stepped back a bit because I'm a bit of a skeptic, and I didn't want to be necessarily a wet blanket on this project. So Supervisor McDaniel, who is our kind of our water liaison, and Supervisor Foltz, who's here today, are on that committee on whether or not, how we're going to move ahead with this. Couple of thoughts, and maybe you can answer this question. If Glenn County wasn't involved, it's not Glenn County's facility. It's not Glenn County imposing a fee on its constituency. So if Glenn County wasn't involved, would that prevent Colusa County, the Bureau, Orland moving ahead if we were involved or not? I mean, it's I don't know.
Yeah, I would think no. It'd just be nice to have you guys on board. That's all.
And I'm not opposed to the idea. I'm just skeptical on, because I think like Rich said, that Forest Service, I think, have looked at it at one time years ago. There's been concessionaires have been tried there before. I mean, this isn't new. I mean, maybe the combined usage, maybe new. So that's, again, that's why I don't want my skepticism to, I just should be wrong as a skeptic, then get into a situation where we're pouring money into something that winds up being a draw on our depleted financial situation.
And we feel that, I can confidently say, we feel like that too. That's why it was okay. If it's gonna have to happen, or if it's gonna happen, we need to have this done, just to give us a clue where we're at. The Bureau's offered, well, for so many years, they could help us with 50% of the operating costs, for 5 years. Well, we have to factor things in to see, okay, make sure that, okay, 5 years out, we've got a bucket half full here, and maybe it won't work without their assistance, so.
And that's, I think, part of where some of my skepticism comes into play, and there's no reflection on the Bureau, but, the state of California is supposed to pay us in lieu of property taxes on ground they've taken over. There's lots of promises out there for financing that, it was all great when it was promised, but it doesn't always come through. And if you're looking at $348,000 or so, I think is what your feasibility study said that the Bureau was going to do for 6 to 10 years, and they come through in 2 years, and then whatever happens with their appropriations, it goes away. Who's left holding that bag? So, and I can see that, if it works, and you're able to generate enough fees to cover it, and it improves the quality of the recreation experience, and you draw. I can see the upside of it too. As you draw more people through your gateway communities, they're going to spend more of their tax dollar, and that it all spins off and is a great thing. I just don't.
Yeah. Well, we do know if they close both Elk Creek and Stony Ford, they're going to serve.
And is there, Rich, can as long as you guys have it, it can't, you guys have a recreation requirement as a bureau that to, seems like I read that somewhere.
I don't think there's actual requirement. I think politically it'll always happen, as you will. But I don't think legally we're obligated. There's authorities that allows us to have recreation up there, but it was not an authorized purpose for the reservoir. So if enough politicians didn't want to do it, I think we can easily walk away, but honestly, I don't see that happening.
Yeah, you know, and it's huge, you know, and I know World Water uses if they win, they take title of that. They pay for the car, they just have a pink slip it. You know, that would be their desire to close it either. And then there's a huge downside because there are, feasibility study, 68% of is local usage of Stony Brook, and that's just quite a bit about people in the county who use that.
Is there a way to tie direct appropriation language to the authorization language in the transfer options? Or will that have to be a continuous battle like we do?
I don't really understand the question. Direct tie the appropriation?
Yeah, direct, tie the cash to the language that allows the actual land transfer. You know, the commitment that the Bureau would make.
It would end.
It would.
It would end. If I understand you correctly, once the title transfer takes place, our contributions would end.
And I look at 8 to 10 years maybe on the title transfer.
Things always move slower than
Steve, I thought you just said there was some commitment for some funding.
Well, they indicate 6 to 10 years that the Bureau would supply, and that's in the feasibility study. And it take, Rick, does it take the act of Congress for that title change?
It does, yes, literally.
So it could be 8 to 10.
Yeah.
And just for clarification, nothing's been actually sat down and negotiated, but from what I heard, it was only up to 5 years. And I can't remember the cost, it was about 50%. But that's all negotiable, and I don't have the authority to enter any kind of financial agreement with that. That's
Was
fine.
Scott throwing that out there, was it not? The 5 years.
I believe it was Frank Pearson, when we talked about it, he was the one, because Scott doesn't have the authority either. That's it's better if you guys do it sooner than later, because it'd be nice for you to have the full extent of that financial contribution to get the feet on the ground and going. So I hate to say, have it treated for 3 years, the title transfer, and then you can lose out a couple of your opportunities.
Well, no matter what we do, we've got to do some of this first, so.
Right.
Any ideas, folks?
Yeah. Personally, I support doing, if we have the funding and that we've allocated for this, I support going forward with the feasibility study as presented, and then work on, as we get that information, work on developing partnerships with Glenn County and the Orland water users, and then dragging our feet so the Bureau hangs in there with us.
I tend to agree. I'm not comfortable with moving forward, going one way or another until we have the data. And I think this is the data that hopefully, that we need to make a decision one way or another. And we've got to go ahead and get the data.
Yeah, and unless Glenn County wants to step up and say, absolutely, we would never consider being involved in this, then that changes things a little bit. Or anybody, any of the shareholders, stakeholders.
Scott, I'd like to see you guys make another run through these numbers.
Okay.
And go back and talk to Novo and some of our other partners. Knowing these studies like I do, I think that there's a couple spots where we can sharpen them a little bit, see if there's some data in-house and maybe a little bit of help that we could pull in-house, just to bring the cost down a little bit.
One thing, if you don't mind me checking, one thing we might be able to do is cut back on the level of detail for the construction set, the plans, because this was I basically bid out going all the way to the point where you could set this down in front of the contractor and say, here's what we need to build. If we don't need that, we can certainly back off on the level of detail on the plans and just make it more general in nature. Still enough information to be able to provide a solid business plan.
I think that's what we need.
Okay.
is-
So if we can do some cost savings
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
imagery and plans, that would certainly be.
So you're saying you have built in here, for example,
Shovel ready.
the detail for
Construction drawings regarding
construction
that.
of boat ramps and that sort of thing?
Ramps.
But
Okay.
Scott, we wouldn't have gotten that from the detail that was in this though, with attached to it, just so you know. I mean, that's not something I would have been able to pull out of reading the backup for the scope of work. So maybe a little bit more detailed scope of work.
Certainly.
And did that include, or would the study show at least, one of the priorities that people wanted was potable water?
Correct, yeah.
So a well or whatever system that would have been included in.
Correct, yeah, and multiple alternatives so that they can choose the best resource with the best cost.
Okay.
And I'd start with the financial plan, but, I mean, there's a couple things, you
Yeah.
know.
I think that's where you need to make your decision as to whether you go or don't go. Come together and talk about it. You need the financial information to see where we are.
So knowing kind of where we're headed or wanting to head, are we gonna be able to get there without the on-the-ground detail plans, like, you know, the boat ramp design and that sort of thing? Can we get to where we want to be without that?
Yeah, what we'll do is we'll just provide location and it's a general discussion, general description of what would be included in it, without providing a level of detail. And I'm talking construction level drawings, which should slow, where you set norms, how you build that
You
up.
can do estimates.
You can do
You can pull down engineer's estimates from someone else.
They've already been designed, we're sitting there and approved by the state water. Okay, that will, question for do we want to have them, make another run of this and with some additional detail for the next meeting?
And if they were going to scale this back to cut a few costs, I think that's appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, I think we just go ahead and do the special, I'd be comfortable with just going ahead if we get figure out not to exceed.
I'm just thinking that the board would be fairly comfortable if you can add some more detail to what you're speaking to. And you can even throw back in that cost of providing the detail into another tab.
Okay.
You know, separate it out
Yeah.
and let us have another run at this at the next meeting.
Okay. Good.
Or we can just beat this horse to death, which is already blood. All right, well, thanks, Scott. Thanks, Glenn.
So direction would be to return at the next board meeting with a greater level of detail in scope and cost breakdown.
Yeah, and break it out farther, you know.
Okay.
Don't include all of the development infrastructure, maintenance costs, if that's, maybe that can be broke out differently or something, I don't know.
I can give this to you too, I have some notes on here. See if you guys do.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rich.
Thanks, Marty.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay. That said, we're going to be putting this back on the next meeting. Good morning.
Good morning. I didn't know when I was supposed to be here, so
We already get it,
you already did it.
Yep. Yep.
we're done.
I saw it. It was a page 9. thought I was, it's all done. Okay, so you realize the status of the bill, that it's on the governor's desk.
We changed where the letter was going to this morning.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate it. It was a 300-mile drive. I loved it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Headed to the governor.
Yep.
Yeah, well, you know, it's been a gallant effort. This makes 29 letters, 29 boards of supervisors. We have one that actually, Fresno's only one member of the board, wrote a letter, but we have 29 boards that have voted against it, either 4-1 or 5-0, and everyone, I'm assuming this was 5-0. Appreciate it so much. I've worked tirelessly for this, and I'm certain we lost, but, you know,
We're gonna fax a copy of it this afternoon.
I appreciate it so much. Thank you for your consideration, and it was just nice to say hello to you.
Well, thank you.
It's a nice drive. I just love Colusa.
There you go.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, now all we have left is our 11 o'clock item, I believe. And we will recess downstairs to undertake the closed session item, or whatever we're doing. We're moving downstairs. And then we'll return here to close it out.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Yes. Please.
Yep.
Well, just when we come back up here.
Right, I know that.
And then,
Then you get to say, report out.
I just got a calendar I would use for tomorrow.
okay. When we figure out what we're going to do.
Oh, yeah.